Welcome to In the Trenches, where entrepreneurs, artists, writers, designers, inventors, warriors, and leaders share their stories of doing the hard, creative work that impacts all of our lives. Let the journey inspire you to do something worthwhile, build something bold, and create your life's work. And now, your host, Tom Morkis.
Welcome back, everyone, to another broadcast of In the Trenches. I'm very excited to have on today's call Summer Tannhauser, who is the founder of LadyBossLeague.com and also EvergreenSalesSchool.com, and her program Evergreen Sales School is what we're going to be talking about today. She's running it live right now, and it's pretty interesting because we were just talking offline about evergreen funnels and what does it take to actually do them the right way, like that they're actually effective so you can actually get sales. And my question for her was like, what's the number one thing that people do wrong when it comes to this kind of stuff? Because it's like the holy grail. Evergreen funnels are like the holy grail for online marketing. So what is that big thing that people do wrong? And it turns out it has a lot to do with giving away maybe a little bit too much for free. So Summer, I'm just going to leave it at that. I want you to take away from there. Like, well, first, thank you for being on In the Trenches. And then tell me a little bit about like, why is that a big mistake, giving stuff away for free?
Yeah, definitely. So thanks for having me today. So this is an interesting topic because I don't know if it's necessarily just giving information away for free that's the issue, but it's more the way that you're providing the information, the kind of the strategic style that you're using, the psychology around behind the way you're presenting it. Because I mean, I'm all about providing value to my audience and providing information and providing them things that they can utilize, even if they're not in one of my paid programs. But I think it's the way that you're providing that information. So the style of evergreen funnel that I really focus on and like to teach is the mini course style. So when you hear that and somebody initially thinks of a mini course, they're like, oh, we're going to be providing all of this information about the topic that, that my paid program is going to be on. I'm going to teach them all this stuff. I'm going to get them excited. And then it's like, well, wait, why aren't they buying my paid program? Well, it's because you taught them everything that they thought they needed to know, and you didn't lead them towards that sale. So the biggest mistake that I've seen with both my live students and just people that have reached out to me about evergreen funnels is that they're going in with the mindset of a focus on teaching in that mini course. And of course, you're going to provide value. Of course, you're going to give some information. You're going to give kind of bite-sized steps or quick wins that they can accomplish in a very short amount of time and feel good about that and taking action forward. But there's so many other things you've got to include in that mini course to make it actually leading towards the sale. So, I talk about things like you need to share your own story, the stories of your students, get personal, let them get to know you, sharing the mistakes you made, kind of letting them know that you were in their shoes. You understand where they are, you know where they're coming from, and just really busting a lot of the myths about the topic as well, because these people are likely coming in, they have interest, but they know you're the expert. So that's the biggest thing, just not providing only information and teaching. It's including all those other things as well that actually lead toward the sale of your program or your course.
Okay, so, and I like that. That makes sense. I feel like I meet a lot of people where that's exactly what we run into, whether it's in the context of an evergreen funnel or even webinars or doing any kind of free content, lead generation tool, the thing that you're giving away, and then finding out maybe, hey, you're actually teaching too much. Maybe you're giving away too much. And yet it's challenging, right? Because I know the opposite. Like if you go to the other extreme, it's like just a pitch, right? And I know there's a happy medium there. So, can you bring this down to earth for us and say, how do I find that happy balance between teaching and making it so it's like people aren't getting everything just from that free content?
Yeah, definitely. So I think I like to look at it as we want to almost kind of like what you said, bring people down to earth. So they've got this big concept or, there's a big concept that you're trying to teach. And when you kind of keep it out there and don't really get into the specifics, that's also not a good idea. Like you said, they're not going to connect with that. So if I'm only talking in big picture view, a person can't see that in their own life, whatever you're trying to teach them, they can't make a connection with that. So the way I look at it is we've got to bring it down to bite-size teachable chunks as well as bite-sized pieces of information that they can connect with. So including those little stories, those little personal things that you've experienced that your clients or students have experienced and giving those specific answers. And I've heard so many people that are like, oh, well, didn't think anybody cared about the way I did this, or I didn't think they cared about my story. But what I like to do is I like to really focus in on trying to include those things that allow your mini course subscriber to connect with you, because they're not just buying a course on a topic, they're buying from you. So making those connections brings it down to earth. They understand you. They can really get the real view in their head of what it is. And then, following up that personal story with the teaching point that goes with it. So you told this story about something, and then you've got the teaching point behind it and potentially giving them one action step to take. And I like that action step to literally take less than 10 minutes for them to complete, because people are, how our inboxes are, how many emails come in, and people aren't going to take the time to go through a 30-minute, video training that you've provided them or something like that when it's mini course style. We want to give them something, 5 to 10 minutes, quick, easy. They can take action on it. They feel like they got a win, and then they're ready to move on to that next lesson that you've got coming tomorrow.
Got it. Okay, so with that in mind, when we think about structuring this, is there a particular sequence or structure that you give to really any kind of email funnel like this? And I'm saying email funnel, maybe I'm being presumptuous here, but something like that. Is there a particular kind of structure or pattern or series of things that you do sequentially? And can you kind of dive into that?
Yeah, sure. So I do kind of have a certain style that I like to go through it with the different emails and the different things that I include. So every email kind of has a purpose in the entire mini course system. I normally do about a 5-day mini course, has worked really well for me. You are going to open your actual sale or enrollment in whatever you're pitching towards the end of those days, making sure you're not waiting until the very end, because then you've got people losing connection and losing interest. So I normally open it around the fourth day of the mini course. But in the beginning part, what I'm going to do is I've got 3 different things that I normally really try to hit on. So one of those things that I hit on is mistakes. So I like to have 3 to 5 mistakes that I see people often make about the topic that I'm teaching. And so those can be anything from beginner mistakes to a little more advanced mistakes, but anything that I think that maybe that person who has come into this mini course, I've got a feeling they've experienced at least one of those mistakes themselves. And so they're going to connect right away and be like, oh man, I'm missing something here. Let's see what else I'm missing as well. So that's going to be the focus of one of those mini lessons. And then I can either explain, give little teaching tips after those mistakes about how they can either never make that mistake if they haven't made it yet, because I'm teaching them from the start, or they could figure out how to correct that if that's something that they're currently making. So always a mistakes email. Another email I always do is focusing in on the myths email. So I'm going to have, it's kind of similar to mistakes, but it's a little bit different. Myths are going to be those things that you see floating around the internet. Go to any Facebook group and type in your topic, and you're going to start to see the same things coming up about whatever it is that you teach over and over again. And so I'm going to actually use that and see what are people saying about this topic that I know is not true, but I can see is common knowledge, and or they think it's common knowledge, right? That it's a commonly myth that is going around the topic. So I'm going to break down those myths. I'm going to give them the real reason. And I normally do this one around email 3, because I'm going to actually start mentioning my paid product in here and just putting in a few mentions about how, basically how my product is counteracting that myth and giving them a way to eliminate that myth and make it not an issue anymore based on what I'm providing. And then for the third thing that I definitely like to include, so I like myths, mistakes, and then a third always have in there is some kind of preview of my actual paid product. So this is one where I do focus a little bit more on the actual teaching in this email, because what I like to do is have, whether it's a course, you're pulling out one little mini lesson directly from the course, or an ebook. It could be a actual chapter out of the ebook, just something that's going to give them a taste of what it would be like to enroll in your program. So if you can actually, allow them at this point to log in and see what it's like to interact with your course or your ebook or whatever it is, as much as you can provide for them that experience, it just gives you a feel for, wow, this is the mini course. Look what her paid program is like. This is definitely something I'd be interested in, and they're just going to keep that engagement. So that's a little more teaching based on that one, but it has a reason because it's previewing your paid offer that you're going to be pitching towards the end.
I really like this. And it's something I haven't thought about specifically, like in this context, like actually pulling out from that paid product, using that. And I think that's interesting that you highlight, like that's the one that you like definitely do teaching. You definitely want to teach with it and use the content from whatever it is that you're selling to teach that particular lesson in that particular email. I love that. It's really clever.
Exactly. Yeah, it works great because, people, they've got in their head, they're thinking, oh, I might be interested in this. So then when your sale emails and your ones that are leading more toward the pitch come up, they already know that they have an interest, and that just helps with making those conversions.
Got it. So, okay. So when you look at this, mistakes, myths, product preview, those are the three core things that sounds like in every kind of evergreen sales funnel that you want to make sure you touch on. Typically, that's what you recommend to clients and customers, and that's what you do yourself, correct?
Yes, that's exactly right. Those are going to be the basis of my first 3 normally lessons in the mini course.
Do you kick it off with the mistakes? Like that's email 1, like get straight into it?
Yeah, I do like to have the mistakes towards the beginning there. And I normally lead in with some kind of personal story or student story because, often it's going to be a mistake that we made at some point with this topic that we're now teaching that we've become an expert at. So letting them connect with you right away is a great way to really gain their interest and let them understand that you understand where they are currently.
Okay, because what I've done in the past with one, and my stuff's not optimized by any means. I mean, I'm just kind of, winging it here. So I will probably go back and kind of evaluate how I did this. But one of the things, the first email I led with was why my course was on pay what you want pricing. And it was immediately, it was about, hey, this is like the first email is, here's why it works to prove like why you should be interested in this. But it sounds like to me, like that's probably not as strong or as effective as like kind of starting with mistakes or common missteps.
Yeah, and I will say, I guess I should also preface this with saying that I do actually send, as soon as they sign up, they get a welcome email that is actually not the very first lesson se of the course. So they're going to get that welcome email, and then they're going to actually get the first course mini lesson the next day. So, what you're saying you've got in your lesson 1, I think I've got some of those things in my welcome email because in that welcome email, that's where I'm actually trying to get them to kind of do some forward thinking, thinking, what could this potentially do for me? What could this do for my life, my business? Why does this matter to me? Why is this important? And I actually encourage them to reply to that welcome email with their reason for joining this mini course. And it just gives a way I could, respond back with a quick, like, that's great. Hope you enjoy the course. Or if they had a question, I can answer that real quick. Just get them to take some kind of action to get them engaged.
Good. I was just taking some notes here because I was thinking about that. That's awesome. So that makes sense because now that I think about how I've done it, I did that without like maybe inadvertently kind of leading with that. But that's really, I think, makes it super crystal clear. Okay, so now let's backtrack a little bit or go back because we kind of started in the weeds with the funnel itself. When we talk about the entry point into this though, is there a particular way that you craft the messaging on that landing page wherever somebody might opt into this free course or this lead magnet or whatever to get them through this series? Because if you're not, teaching a lot or you're not teaching comprehensively, it's one of those things like, how to make your first $1,000 online or something like that, right? And it's like, well, wait a second, this is just kind of teaser to my course. So how do you come off like authentic, with integrity and kind of still being able to kind of maintain that promise? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. So I always, I do say that I like to have some kind of, I call it a guarantee with my mini course. And I think that's what you're kind of alluding to here, that there is
Mm-hmm.
something that you're telling them that they're going to achieve
Mm-hmm.
by going through this mini course. And I definitely think, regardless of with having all these other things in it, that I'm going to still be providing a lot of value in it. It's just not going to be the main focus of each lesson per se, the teaching, but it is going to include those tips. So, looking at my own opt-in, one of my big Evergreen mini courses I run is based on Pinterest and getting traffic through Pinterest, and it leads to my paid Pinterest course. So some of the things that I have, like in the bullet point section of my opt-in page, I say I'm going to teach them 4 ways your Pinterest profile is costing you client sales and money, and what you can do to change it. And I do talk about that because I talk about that mistakes email, right? Because I'm saying what are the mistakes people are making with their Pinterest profile, and so that I am going to give them some tips there in that email for them to correct it. Like another one, another bullet point I have: 3 surprising reasons that no one wants to follow you on Pinterest and how to attract your ideal audience. So that would be one that I would address in the myths email, because I've got, reasons that they may have not thought of that people would not want to follow them. So you see how I'm doing that there? It's like I'm still using the mistakes and myths, but I'm crafting my bullet points in a way where it still sounds very valuable, and it is very valuable, but it's just all the way you're wording it.
Got it. Okay, cool. That makes sense. All right. So now kind of moving toward the back end of it, you mentioned, okay, toward the end of this, if we use that 5-day framework as kind of a template, at least to start from, you're teasing the course with the content from it, which I love. I think that's really clever. And then you get into some sort of sales pitch, right? Mm-hmm. So what are some things that we need to keep in mind if we're doing something like this? And I say that you could go as broad or as specific as you want. So yeah, I'll just go from there, and we'll dig in.
Yeah. So like I said, normally mini course lesson number 3 is the one where I'm previewing that paid product that I'm going to be pitching at the end. And so they're getting a taste on day 3. I'm starting to mention the name of the product as well, just so it's getting in their heads. And on the PS of that email, I normally include something that teases that some kind of special offer or sale or something is coming for that product. And so, stay tuned, check out tomorrow's lesson, just teasing it so they know to look for it. Then it's actually in that lesson number 4 that I do go ahead and open up this offer. And I do personally like to have some kind of limited time offer that's involved with this mini course that I'm going to let stay open for several days past the mini course. And I'm going to include sales emails for that. But you need some reason for people to take action. So if you're just saying, hey, the course is open, it's not reason enough, right? They need a reason to get off the kind of indecision fence and say, yes, this is for me, and look at these additional things I'm getting or the special price I'm getting if I take action now. So I do go ahead and open that up on day 4. And so it's going to be open on day 4, day 5, and then I normally keep it open 2 to 3 days after the course ends. And then on those days, I'm going to be focusing more on just sales emails, follow-up emails that are leading to that ultimate cart close. So more of the traditional type of emails that you would send in a launch sequence. So after the course ends, I've got things like pretty much like a FAQ email where I'm answering common questions. I've got an email where I'm addressing people's objections to purchasing. I've got a last call email. I've got a case study email where I'm going through a case study of someone who went through the course. So those are, your more traditional launch emails, but it's day 4 and day 5. It is open, and I am talking about it within the actual lesson of the course as well. I actually do like to send out an extra email on day 4 of the course and day 5 of the course. So they're getting 2 emails that day. They're going to get the lesson email in the morning. And then on day 4, I'm sending out more of a official, this offer is open. So kind of like that first email when a launch opens, I'm sending that out in the afternoon just to make sure they actually noticed it and it didn't get lost in the lesson. And then day 5, I like to send out more of like a recap email in the afternoon, like you finished the course, congratulations. Here's everything that you learned, just kind of a reminder of what we've gone through for the week. and then reminding them there's still a lot to learn. It may seem confusing at this point, but here's my offer. Here's how I can help you. So, a lot of stuff, a lot of working parts there, but mostly it's just getting those emails written and getting them in the right sequence and leading towards that cart close.
Oh, okay, interesting. So you typically will do 2 emails on that fourth day, the fifth day. Then you go into then that's the 5th day typically will finish like the course itself. Then the follow on next 2 to 3 days, you're doing like the sales follow up. Hey, Q&A, objection handling, case studies, last call. That'll happen at the next few days. But that's all just like, pushing toward the sale, right?
Exactly. So, I might mention the mini course in those. I might, just kind of another congratulations or that type of thing. But mostly those are more the traditional launch style sales focused emails.
Okay, great. Now, and you're pushing typically to a traditional sales page. Anything to know about the product itself? Because I have some, ideas and thoughts on this and pricing and what it takes to get people to purchase at certain, touch points based on the price of the product or service, right? So like $10, you could send somebody Amazon, they'll buy it in one click or something like that, right? Get up to $100 or $200. I think it's typically easy enough to sell via email. You get up to $300 to $500, it makes it a little more difficult. Typically, like a webinar is more effective. And then obviously, the higher it goes from there, the higher touch you need. So with something like this, what's the ideal price point?
Yeah, that's a great point. So I have had different students in my program who have different price point options that they're looking at. So for example, if you did have a quite low price point product, like a $19, $20 ebook or something like that, I do it a little differently where I include that link throughout the entire course almost at, starting on like day 2. And it's not so much of a push to the sale. It's because it's more of a kind of no-brainer purchase and somebody might be ready at any point during the course to purchase. So, if you've got a really low price product, you can definitely do that. For what type of products really worked well in the traditional style that I just talked about, I found that anything from about a $197 to up to potentially $397, and you could discount, you could give them a special offer for that $397 where they're getting it at $297 just during this mini course offer. So anything in that range, even potentially up to $497 and discounting by $100 seems to work really well in this type of model. Like you said, there's definitely options if you're getting a higher price point and if it's going to be more of a really personalized offer, even some kind of, high touch service involved in it, whatever it might be, then what I suggest for those people is instead of going for the sale, you're going more for going to a contact form or a book a call form or, something like that if you need to speak with that person first to close the call. Or similarly, if you're doing a webinar, I have had some students where they change it out and instead of going towards the sale, they're going towards a webinar that they either host live every 2 weeks, every 1 week, something like that, or they have an automated sequence where it's going to be, happening 2 to 3 days after the mini course closes.
Okay, so you get through all of this, you sell the product or you don't, because you either get a sale or you don't. What happens next?
Yeah, so I do like to have a downsell that is offered, and I've had some nice success with that. If the person is not taking you up on your main offer that you're pitching in this course, if you can provide some kind of smaller offer, lower priced, maybe less high touch, something still related, of course, to your mini course and is going to address those same pain points or the reason that they opted in. But if you can offer that, and I just do it real short, I don't get too complicated. It normally comes out 2 days after my initial offer has closed. And I'm going to send an email that's kind of like, you asked for it, or, something like that, where it's kind of leading, but they're like, oh, what is that? And they check it out. And then I just send one more email the next day, kind of alluding to, hey, if you want this or not. Here it is, it closes tonight. They've got a real short opportunity to purchase it. And I found that works really well to get a few more customers in the door that may have not been ready to commit to your full product. You can even once you get them into that lower price product, if it leads well, you can actually give them one more time, in that email sequence potentially that they go into when they get that downsell product. You can give them one more chance, to purchase your your upsell product or your main offer product, once that they've experienced that. And sometimes you'll get some more sales like that, but it gets a little more complicated there. But definitely having some kind of downsell is definitely highly recommended.
Okay, I like that. Do you, after all said and done, so then let's assume that the person there's a few branching paths here. The person purchases the program, or the person doesn't purchase the program, but they do purchase the downsell, or they don't purchase the product or the downsell. What do you do after that? Do you typically just put them onto your main mailing list, or what happens?
I do at this point. I just put them onto my main mailing list at this point. They're, with the way I have it set up, if they do purchase, they are going to get a follow-up email sequence. It's going to kind of encourage them to take action on that product that they just purchased, just so that I, am actually having people go in and make use of the course and not just letting it sit there. But I do at this point just put them onto my main mailing list. I've looked at some options that I may set up in the future where if somebody doesn't purchase at all, keeping them out of my main emails and then sending them some just value-based emails that I've actually written in the past still on that same topic as the mini course they went through, and then giving them a different opportunity a couple weeks down the road, like signing up for an automated webinar on the topic or some other type of teaching style that maybe they would relate better to or get more value out of. So I've looked at that as just something I haven't set up yet, but something to consider, that if you want to keep them going in that funnel, just go back to the value at that point, and then you can do a pitch again down the road.
Okay, great. I like that. So what are your thoughts on like tripwires and things like that? The idea of like offering something immediately for purchase that's lower price. Like how does that factor into what you do?
Yeah, so I actually really like it. I know people have different thought processes on if it's a good idea or if you should be providing value at the beginning. To me, if you've got a mini course or any type of funnel that you are planning to eventually run paid traffic to, I want to know it's converting first, but I really do think it's smart to get that tripwire in there so that you are hopefully recouping a lot of your ad costs at the beginning and not having to worry quite so much at the beginning if you don't have your conversion rates up as high as you want them for the final offer, so that you still feel like you can do that and not be losing money. So I do use a tripwire in mine. The biggest thing is to think about what is something you can provide that you are not promising within your mini course. That's kind of the biggest mistake I see, because why would somebody opt in to your mini course and then, get this tripwire and they're like, wait, but I'm going to learn this in the mini course. Why would I get this? So you really have to kind of think through it and think like, what is going to make sense here? So like in my example, I'm telling them I'm going to teach them Pinterest in my mini course. So my tripwire is that I am offering them a set of 10 Pinterest optimized image templates. So they can take these and use them on their blog. And they've got these fully editable, Canva templates that's free to use. And that's something that I talk about the graphics in my course, and they know that. But they also know, themselves, if they're not a graphic designer, if they know they're not good at creating graphics, they know they're going to struggle with that. And so this is like one of those things that they understand it's going to save them time. It's going to save them potentially money of hiring someone to do this. And so it kind of becomes that no-brainer offer that just helps them along that much more.
That's interesting. So whatever the content, whatever you're promising, it's got to be complementary to that. Maybe it's a way, I guess maybe a way of thinking of that is complementary, like maybe it would help them get better results or quicker results or something like that, but also is outside of the bounds of whatever the promise of the course was.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I found that things, like you said, that are maybe going to help them get better or quicker results. So like if you're providing a swipe file that's going to help them along, or, templates like I'm doing, or, some kind of specific plan that you used and some kind of system that you're giving them that system so they can implement what you did. Anything that's going to save them time or move them along faster. Some people even set it up, if you feel like you've got a really high value mini course, and I see this working better with ones that are potentially longer than 5 days, like in the 7 to 10 day range, you can actually offer them to get all of the lessons up front for your tripwire so that they don't have to wait the 10 days to get those lessons. And that's something that if someone's really ready to take action on something, you can give them that option for, a small price as well.
Yeah. Do you like that as an option, or does that, like, what are your thoughts on that one? Because I've thought about that, but I'm like, it's a hard thing for me to pull the trigger on or even test, because I'm like, I don't know. Maybe it's just, what are your thoughts on it?
Like I said, I think it's got to be a longer mini course. I think it's got to be over 5 days for it to feel worthwhile to them. Thinking, oh man, I've got to wait 10 days to get all of this. So that could be a driver there. And then, I think the problem there is that I see is you do have to balance it with, I do need to be providing enough information in here versus just the more psychology type things like the myths and the mistakes to make sure that it is worth their time and their value for purchasing, even if it is that small price. So for me, I haven't gone there yet just because I didn't want to have to worry kind of about that balance.
Gotcha. Okay, very cool. So we're coming up to the top of our conversation, top of the hour, so to speak. I mean, there's a lot of obviously things we could cover in here. I'm curious if there's anything that you want to highlight or point out in terms of, delivery or even positioning. Like, we didn't really get into landing page. I know you get into all this in your course anyway, so that's why people are listening. It's like, well, if this scratches the surface, well, we'll talk about where you can go after this. But I'm curious, like when it comes to like landing pages or sequencing, maybe like in particular, because like I check out your Pinterest course and it's a free course, but you have like a really like, it seems like really in-depth landing page for it. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, is that something that we should probably put a little more time and effort into as well?
Yeah, I'm really big on having a high converting landing page because I feel like if you're going to spend all the time to set up this mini course, you're going to make all these lessons, you're going to set up the whole automation sequence, that I want the large majority of people that land on that landing page to actually opt in and not just look at it and think, I'm not going to do this. So it's interesting. I get really high conversions on my landing pages, and depending on which one you see when you go to the URL for my Evergreen funnel, there's actually 2 options. I split test them, and it's actually very interesting that both of them do almost the same percentage. They're both converting around 70% right now, and have been for about the last 6 months at this point, which is quite high, for a landing page. And I've got one that is basically a bullet point landing page. And it converts a little bit lower than the other one, but not so significant that I've kind of killed it. The other one is more like sales page style. So I like doing this, and I like encouraging my students to do this sales page style landing page because it makes people feel like even though you're offering this free course for free, that you believe in it so much, you've put so much time into it, you've spent all this time on this landing page to get people to opt in, that they're that more convinced of the value that you've put into it. So that page has traditionally converted about 4 to 5% higher than the bullet point opt-in one. But, I tell people, if it's going to take you a week to get your sales page done, if you're doing the sales page style versus an hour to do the bullet point, I say, get the bullet point one up there first, start getting people into your course, and then we can work on the sales page as you work to improve it. So I don't want people to get stuck by saying, hey, I don't know how to do this yet. It's going to take me too much time. But I do think it's a great option to have the sales page style opt-in page, if you do have kind of the capability to be able to make that happen.
I love it. Fantastic. Well, Summer, I know this is really useful for me. I've taken a lot of notes. I know it just scratches the surface, though, because there's obviously a lot behind the scenes we didn't get to touch on at all, like tech, automation, things like, even how we structure it like in more depth. And I know that's kind of what your program is all about. So the floor is yours. Where can people reach out to you to find you, maybe find out about Evergreen Sales School? Go for it. The floor is yours.
Sure, definitely. So if you just go to evergreensaleschool.com, that's the easiest way to find it. You're going to be taken directly to a waiting list, basically to put in your name and email address there to find out when it opens again. By doing that, you're also going to get onto my main email list at this point. So you're going to, start hearing from me and be able to keep up with what I'm doing and the value I'm providing. I've got a bunch of video blogs on my website right now that talk about Evergreen funnels, that talk about Evergreen courses. So you can definitely also find me on my blog at ladybossleague.com. And you're going to be able to have, there's a variety of opt-ins there that are going to walk you through the automation checklist and swipe file if you are interested in setting up an Evergreen course. So either way, evergreensaleschool.com or ladybossleague.com, you'll find me, be able to get on my list and stay up to date.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being on In the Trenches, Summer.
Absolutely. This was great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to In the Trenches. Your creative work doesn't stop here. Join the Resistance, the small but growing army of entrepreneurs and artists putting a dent in the world at www.tommorkis.com. Never fight alone. Join the Resistance.